Welcome to Unveiling the Secrets of Executive Presence, where we delve into the transformative power of cultivating a strong visual brand and authentic image for women leaders. As a certified image professional at Style for Life, I have the privilege of working with Australia's most influential women who are dedicated to leaving a mark on the world while embracing their strength and courage through a compelling visual identity. The journey to the C-suite for ambitious women is often fraught with self-doubt, judgment, and uncertainty about whether their executive presence and gravitas will be enough to propel them forward. Executive presence stands as a cornerstone skill for success in the business world, yet remains shrouded in mystery and ambiguity, prompting the launch of this enlightening series. Unveiling the Secrets of Executive Presence offers invaluable insights into honing and leveraging executive presence as a private tool for career progression through candid interviews with esteemed senior executive women in Australia. In this series, you'll discover first-hand accounts from respected leaders who advocate for mastering executive presence as a catalyst for personal and professional triumph, shedding light on its profound impact on their journeys to success. Now, today I have the pleasure of talking to Ingrid Maynard. Ingrid has worked for over 25 years with large listed and privately owned organisations to improve their sales performance. She is known for ensuring the sales process enriches both the salesperson and the customer. Ingrid's passion for salespeople and sales leaders to show up differently is underpinned by her pathway to enrichment philosophy, which is grounded in behavioural modelling and neuroscience, enabling teams to take different actions to achieve results consistently and effectively. As the founder and managing director of The Sales Doctor, Ingrid consults closely with key client stakeholders to create bespoke programs fit for purpose. She is well known for having profound impacts on sales teams and has guided many to sales targets completely out of the park well before they expected to. Ingrid's mission is to change the way people see and understand sales and is committed to creating a sales revolution, having to date worked with many leading brands and retailers. So, Ingrid, it's a pleasure to have you on this series. Welcome.
Thank you, Julie. Great to be here.
I look forward to hearing what you have to say on this topic, which, I think is still, there's a lot of ambiguity over what is it, what does it mean, how do I do this? So let me start by asking you the first question, which is, when did you first realise the importance of executive presence in your career? Because I know you always look immaculate and you always dress well. And in sales, it's really important, right?
It's absolutely critical because, especially for salespeople, you're the first experience of whatever brand you're representing. And so whatever the customer experiences in that moment says so much about whether or not that person, someone, and that company by extension is something or someone that they can trust. And so it's really important that we remember that. The first time I realized that appearance really mattered was way back in my career when I thought that I looked all right. And I remember I just had this, I don't know whether I'd call it a penchant or whether it was just a comfort level of wearing a certain type of shoe, but it was a shoe without toe in it. I can't believe I'm saying that. And everything else was very corporate, but I just loved wearing shoes. God. And I remember my manager, sort of pulled me aside and said, you really need to look at getting, some covered in shoes here. It's sending the wrong message. I was a bit outraged by that, Julie. I thought, how dare that person say, question my style and my fashion sense. And she sent me over to a woman who was just another trainer that I worked with, who was this Italian woman who I absolutely adored. I kind of idolized her, and she was in her early 50s back then, I would say. she wore the most magnificent coloured lipstick that I have ever seen. And she just had it going on, as Italian women tend to do.
Yes.
And and she just had everything so well put together. And I remember thinking from that moment on, that's that's the style that I really want to emulate. And she had this beautiful way about her of kind of, maintaining my sense of self-esteem while also sort of introducing me to what corporate dressing actually meant. And from that moment on, I really understood the power of it, not just from the external, but also how it made me feel.
Mm. And how did it make you feel?
Well, it made me feel ready.
Mm.
It meant that when I felt like, from the outside,
Mm.
my externals were well put together, it meant that I could forget about myself. Well, that's what it does for me. It makes me forget about myself, and I'm not so concerned about how I look. And then I can be 100% present for the other, which to me is, the foundation for every philosophy about,
Mm.
customer engagement and selling that I have. And so for me, it was just one of those things that gave me confidence. It was an inside out job, even though it was outside in. They kind of fed off each other. And on those days where I really, feel good about the outfits that I'm putting on, and the message that I'm like, it's all conscious. So the message that I'm trying to convey with the person that I'm meeting with, it just enables me to show up in a better way.
Mm. It's interesting, isn't it? I know I've seen women transition from looking, dare I say it, mediocre, to putting them in something which gives them strength. And we all know the term, dress in your power suit. But for a lot of women, it's important. It's like a suit of armor going into battle. When you're going into a boardroom full of men, and they're all going to be, judging you pretty much
Yeah.
when you walk in. If you've got that, feeling of, well, I know I don't have to worry about how I look.
Yep.
I've got everything's working for me in the right way,
Yep.
and I can go in and I can just deliver my content, then it does make a big difference.
Absolutely.
They have a lot more confidence, and
Mm.
they're able to get through what they have to get through. So what are some of the strategies that you employ for yourself to amplify your own executive presence, having come from that experience of meeting a woman who was extremely stylish, well put together, coordinated, probably,
Mm.
as Italian women do. We
Oh,
know
yeah.
women just have it. Just
Yeah,
come
she
back from
just
Italy,
did.
so I saw it firsthand over there.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, look, it took me a long time, I think, to really curate an image and a wardrobe, a corporate wardrobe that I felt was me, rather than putting on stuff that, you know, felt like it was appropriate, but didn't feel like me at all. And so that's taken a long time. And I actually think that the outside, the clothes that I wear, are representative of that journey that I've been on, about finding myself on the inside. So, it from there, I went into my own business for the first business that I had. And because that was working from home, and because I was a young mum at that stage, my wardrobe had, and it was a very challenging time in my life. I really didn't have a lot of money. And so my corporate wardrobe back then consisted of maybe 5 pieces. And one of those was a jacket, one was a skirt, one was a boat neck top, one was, I mean, it was just, I had nothing. And so it was just, everything had to work. And there were certain outfits that I would wear for certain occasions. And then the rest of the time, when I was non-client facing, I would just wear, the other clothes that I had. And I knew that, one day I would, consciously create that wardrobe. And so then it went from there, to really thinking about stepping it up, because then my definition of what that meant. You know, that suit of armor that you described before, I think is so beautifully put, because it has been for me at times, you know. And then, you know, that next layer was really just feeling very comfortable in pants. That's just me. I just feel comfortable in pants. I've never been that, you know, comfortable with my legs. So the more that they're covered up, the better. And I've, you know, come to find a style of pants as well that sort of suits me. And you know, jackets that suit me as well. There are certain jackets that make me look like I'm wearing someone else's clothes, you know, those sorts of things. And then I think the when my clients started to change, I realized that I needed to change my wardrobe as well accordingly, because the more senior the people became who I was meeting with, I needed to make sure that that was reflected. And it was also reflective of my own experience level as well. There's an expectation, I think, whether that's implied or explicit, that comes with being in a certain industry and putting yourself out there in a certain way. There's an expectation that you are that representative of that level of experience. And so it's a constant evolution for me, you know, as I continue to do the work that I do and age.
All all true, all of what you've said. You know, you do have to, you know, step up to the level of the client that you're working with, because it's, you know, you are your brand, right?
Yes.
That's who you're representing. And so you need to come across as being credible.
Yeah.
And when that's happening, then you feel, you know, you're feeling confident and everything works. So having said all of that, and I respect the fact that you have, over time, you have understood and appreciated the certain styles that work for your body shape. And you also respect and acknowledge parts of you that you want to try and not place focus on,
Yes.
but put focus on those that obviously are important. So, you know, working on style jacket, wearing pants, etc. And that's great, because a lot of women perhaps don't give themselves permission to go through that process of discovery and understanding about, well, who am I? What works really well on me? And they will just wear brands and wear things that they think are appropriate, but don't necessarily do them the best justice.
Right.
So, you know, kudos to you. But we still get back to this whole topic of executive presence. And it's floated around in a lot of associations. You know, they talk about, you know, gaining executive presence and more gravitas and everything else. But for you, from where you sit, and I know you deal with some pretty big organizations and sales directors and etc., what are some of the misconceptions you found around executive presence, and how do you feel other people can work to overcome them?
I think COVID changed a lot of that, unfortunately, for the worse, I think. What I mean by that, Julie, and I know you and I have probably had this conversation over a coffee, but I feel that there's this misunderstanding that substance beats style, and that's all that really matters. So it doesn't really matter what I wear, because of the level of seniority that I represent, the amount of commercial credibility that I have. My credentials should speak for themselves. What comes out of my mouth is gold, so therefore I can wear, you know, a puffer jacket to an executive meeting. Those sorts of things, I think, were some of the unfortunate outcomes of lockdown. When we became so used to being at home, we kind of threw out a lot of those rules. Now, some of that was lovely. Some of it was beautiful in the sense that we became a bit more real. We became a bit more vulnerable. We became a little bit more open to letting people into our lives outside of the office, because we were in this kind of environment, right? But when we come back into kind of a little bit more of a business as usual environment, one of the things that I think we need to accept is the reality that people won't be able to hear anything that comes out of your mouth if they don't want to. If the first impression that they get from you is, and it's all subconscious. So if I ask somebody, they go, "Oh, I'm not like that. I don't judge people on what they wear," or, "Oh no, I don't." Well, they might not think that they do, but there is significant evidence scientifically to suggest that that first minute is the evaluation point for somebody to determine whether or not they're going to open up to somebody to hear what they say. Then from that point on, it really is about what it is that they say over what they look like. But if you don't show up in a way that is representative of the credentials that you put forward or of the experience that you have, and then you're complaining that no one's taking you seriously, it's important to then understand how the human brain works and work with it rather than against it and wish that it was something other than what it was. So I think that that's one of the big misnomers, I think, of executive presence, because it's really important. The other thing I would like to say, Julie, and it's just my personal opinion, but I think it relates to my philosophy around how I like to show up in the world. It's not that I walk around with a mirror in front of me every day. So once I leave the house, I might not look at myself again until I get in the car on the way home or at home. But everyone else has to look at me. So I try to make that as pleasant as possible, so that it's pleasing, so that there's something that's pleasing. It's similar with my home. I like to kind of have area as I look around my home, I like to see things that make me happy, that are pleasing to the eye. And so, I'm never going to be Elle Macpherson. I've been very aware of that my whole life. I'm never going to be, on the cover of a magazine, but I can really work with what God's given me and make sure that I'm as reasonable to other people's eyes as I can possibly be, and that's really being about being conscious.
Yeah, about being conscious, but I think there's also a level of self-respect as well.
Yeah, true.
And setting standards for yourself. What are you prepared, what level are you prepared to go to, and what level are you prepared not to go down to?
Right.
When you're leaving the house in the morning, because if you can maintain a certain standard, I think irrespective of what's going on around you, I think that also carries you through. And I guess you've seen this too. I don't know if you educate sales teams on this particular topic when you're going through your training, but what are the sorts of things you've seen in the work that you do in organizations with the visual component of their whole presentation? Because you'd be working with some companies that have to do some pretty big pitches, I would imagine.
Well, that's exactly right, and it's interesting because it's such a fraught topic. How do you have the conversation with somebody about the dead skin cells that are down the front of their jumpers, for example? How do you have a conversation with somebody who hasn't brushed their hair? How do you have a conversation with somebody who has dandruff all over the back of their top? How do you have the conversation with somebody who hasn't paid attention to their personal hygiene? I mean, again, I think that there's some of the hangovers from lockdown that, have
it was just lockdown, or was it there beforehand as well?
Well, I don't know, but I have seen it far more with far more prevalence since lockdown. There's been a casualization, I think.
Totally, I agree.
Yeah, not just in the workforce. I mean, it started with sneakers, being okay to wear. And look, I'm all for that too. Because I'm so short. I've always worn heels, but it's nice every now and again to wear a pair of sneakers. That said, would I wear a pair of sneakers into a client's office? No, I wouldn't. Would I wear that to a first meeting with somebody? Absolutely not. So, Yeah, but there's been a real casualization. So I don't know. I don't know whether these people ever had that level of self-care, self-awareness, self-respect. I don't know. Um, but it's a tricky conversation. And I see that as recently as the other week. You know, I had to pull the head of sales aside and say, you might want to have a talk to that person over there, because they've got all the, dead skin cells sort of down the front of them. And the person was absolutely divine, like gorgeous person, really good at what they did, but was really letting themselves go. And I think the argument in that person's mind was, well, I'm only meeting with this sort of a role, which is kind of heavy industrial. It's not going to matter.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I used to do a lot of work in corporate uniform, and even, I mean, they used to bring you in to sharpen up, the people that were going out to represent the company, because, it was important. They didn't want the company to be seen as a shabby, sort of backyard sort of operation. Not that it was huge organizations.
Mm.
But yeah, it's interesting how the mind works. And I guess this is where your neuroscience comes in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're helping them understand what thoughts go through someone's mind when they're dealing with you on a professional level.
Yes.
Totally different to, meeting someone down the street on the weekend, and, you're in your leisure gear or whatever.
That's right.
You mentioned sneakers. Leisure gear is another thing which has really made its presence felt.
Yeah.
Can't believe the number of women that get out in lycra that maybe shouldn't. Anyway, we won't go there. That's
Yeah.
not about this.
No.
But you were talking about the pandemic, and look, the pandemic, yes, has done its damage in a lot of different areas.
Yep.
But I think for women in the workplace, I think it had a profound impact on how they put themselves together throughout that whole few years, because often they were wearing so many different hats and trying to juggle and do so many different things.
Yep.
But do you think women are trying to get back to a sensible level of dress now post-COVID? I mean, I'm starting to see a little bit of movement back.
Yes.
But even in saying that, one of my clients who deals at the highest of levels, even in Canberra, said she went to a meeting just recently. It was a dinner meeting, and MPs even were showing up in sneakers.
Yep.
She felt extremely overdressed. And I went, don't worry about it. It'll come around. It'll eventually come around.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I am seeing a movement back. And I think, again, when we think about young people entering the workforce, the people who, are starting their first corporate job, out of uni or maybe, straight from school, they're looking for direction around, how do I need to be, not just in my skill set, not in my capabilities, not just in my attitudes, but also how I show up, from a physical perspective. And I do see young women in particular really, really loving, the fact that they can go to work and put special clothes on, because we are so casual in our private lives. I think they absolutely relish the opportunity to dress up and feel what that feels like when you have a great jacket that gives you a certain line and gives you a certain shape, when you wear makeup in a certain way, when you don a pair of glasses, when you put a belt on that matches, all of that stuff that just, you don't know the difference until you know the difference.
Very good comment, actually. That's right. Yes, to experience it. And I've seen that in people's faces when, said before, you take them from where they are now and show them where they could be.
Right.
There is quite an interesting shift in their whole posture, even in front of the mirror, because they're like, thought I could do that. Never thought I could look like that.
Yes.
And it's quite powerful. It is quite powerful.
Yeah.
So have you seen this whole concept of executive presence sort of change over the course of your career, aside from the whole COVID injection?
Yeah, I have. I think that since I think there's a few things that have really contributed to that. I think the prevalence of platforms like Instagram, Facebook, even LinkedIn, especially from a professional perspective,
Mm.
has meant that people are far more aware of themselves as a personal brand, as an extension of the company that they represent. So there's that language that's out there. So I think that really supports that. And then, that corporate or executive presence component is a big part of that personal brand. So I think that there's an acceptance of that. I mean, I remember, you were one of the pioneers, one of the first people I ever came across who specialized in this area. And I remember thinking, gee, that is something. That is an area that is untapped. And there's more and more people, going into it, but they're kind of calling themselves more personal branding or personal brand. There's not really an understanding still, I don't think, of the power of executive presence and what that means. Intentional dressing, dressing for reasons, dressing for an occasion, for example, and what that can really do to, you said, standing in front of a mirror, but the way that somebody feels when they know that they look a certain way, and then how that changes the way that they show up, the way that they deliver something, the way that they communicate. Yeah, I think there's a greater amount of awareness now of the importance of it.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that, women do, and people in general, there's a lot more in terms of their intellect and intelligence that they can build on out there to get the credibility on paper, so to speak. They can understand their area of expertise really well. But what I find is that there is, sadly, an ignorance to this whole other area, which, as you said from the start, when you considering first impressions and that first meeting when you go into an office, how important that whole visual element is because of what's going on in someone's mind.
That's right.
Why it's sort of pushed to one side as being seen as fluffy,
Yes.
or it's not really important. What's really important is who you are as a person, the levels you've actually got to in terms of your I'm trying to say, certifications, experience,
Yep.
companies you've worked for, results you've got on the board, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But when women are really trying to get to those C-suite positions and wanting to cut through, it's just surprises me that they don't pay more attention to it. And I don't know if you see that in your line of work, but
I see it all the time, Julie. I see it all the time.
mm.
And again, it's just that misunderstanding
Mm.
that of how the human brain works.
Mm.
When we think about, someone at C-suite, it should go without saying that that person is somebody that we trust and somebody that we would like to be like, for example. And Tony Robbins talks about that. He talks about, if you want to be trusted, first you've got to be someone who other people like or want to be like. Well, when we think about the relationship between that and executive presence, it doesn't take a genius to work out that there's a huge component there that's really necessary. And yet I still see people in all sorts of outfits. And I think a lot of it too is because they just don't know. They don't know that people like you exist. So, it's great that
You know
you're.
what? I had someone say that to me only just recently,
Yep.
and I was quite astounded. Yeah.
Yep. Because I think for a lot of people, they're wearing clothes that they feel comfortable in so that they can work. And that's totally fine.
Mm.
Agree. But you can also have that beautiful blend of both. You can find a style that suits you, that brings out your best, and that you're also really comfortable in. And But for a lot of women, especially as we get older, our body shapes change over
Oh,
time, and then what worked once, doesn't work anymore. And I think we run into trouble when we try to go back to a style that used to work for us when we were maybe in our 30s, 40s, and when I, now that I'm in my 50s, I now need to think about not just my body shape, but the stage of life that I'm at. Is it appropriate? Is it sending the right message?
yes,
Will I be taken seriously? Does
yes.
this represent the body of work that I've done? And also, do I look like somebody that the person I'm meeting with wants to know more about and wants to engage with?
Mm.
Mm.
Look, there's a lot of planning, and I had one of my clients once said, she has had a lot of idiosyncrasies, and she wanted to dress authentically and in a certain way. And she said, look, I really love all of this, but she said, if I get to the door and go to walk out of the door and I don't feel like myself, then I'm going to go and take it all off and
For
start
sure.
again. So it was really an interesting exercise working with her
Mm.
to create something which allowed her to express her individuality and her creativity, but she was still presenting, in a way which was going to match the level of people that she was actually doing business with.
Right.
And, that's where there's a delicate balance of,
Yes.
how far do we go this way? How far can we go that way?
Yeah.
And so I guess that's what makes my job interesting, but it is, it is really important. So thank you for sharing all of that. I think there's some really interesting content in all of that.
Thanks,
So
Julie. Yeah.
I know we've known each other for a long time, and
Yes.
I've seen your business grow,
Yes.
um,
And change.
and change. Where do you see yourself in 5 years, Ingrid?
I've thought about that a lot, actually. The work that I really want to do, so there's a legacy piece that I'm building at the moment that's going to take a little bit of time,
Mhm.
but I'm by the end of this year, most of that will, like the back end of that will be built. And what I'm on a mission to do is to change the association that we have with the word sales so that it's not a dirty word, and also to create a sales revolution. And I know that sounds like a very lofty thing to do, but what I mean by that is that it's an organization wide approach to driving revenue, profit, and growth, because it's not just up to the salesperson anymore. So there's something that I'm building that will support that and will really help people on their sales journey, their sales career journey, from first day right through to director level and C level. I've just finished the first draft of my book, so I would like to really, build on that over the next 5 years, with some more speaking, and some possibly even another book, before the end of that 5 years. And my ultimate luxury would be to work with, a handful of clients that I absolutely love working with, that I know that I can make a huge difference to their results, and be immersed in those businesses. So for me, the next 5 years is really about leaving a legacy behind, and a body of work that I hope can be picked up, by others, and run with, and built on.
Fabulous. So are you, I mean, you're a great mentor. I know that you help a lot of people, individually as well as the organizations that you work with.
Mm.
And talking about the whole topic of executive presence, within that whole framework there, what are you doing to ensure that it's an area of strength for you moving forward over the next 5 years, and creating the sales revolution and all of those people that are lucky enough to have you mentoring them?
So sorry, what was the question again?
So what are you doing to ensure that executive presence,
Yes,
area of strength for you moving
yes,
forward and for all
yes.
the people that you're mentoring?
So I think just my goal is to be um, somebody that other people, feel comfortable being around, and trust. So for me, it's about continuing to make sure that that representation, from an executive presence perspective, is maintained and possibly elevated a little bit more as well. So the types of pieces that I buy today are, they have to work hard. They're classics. They're pieces, again, that when I put them on, I feel great in, and will hold me in good stead. I love a Carla Zampatti suit. This is a Carla, but that to me is something that I feel really, really super, super good and strong in. And I think the other thing that I've noticed is that other women that I work with, we enjoy each other. We enjoy the way that we look together. So, it's difficult for me to have those conversations sometimes, but I hope that, when people like what I'm wearing, for example, or comment on that, it gives them an idea that, because I'm nothing special, that they can too, and that I think that that's certainly something that, just by being me, I might be able to inspire in others.
Well, look, I'm a firm believer in, you attract people into your net because of who you are
It's true.
and what you represent and your values. And, I think that says a lot for who you are as a person, and hopefully, um, I think there's a lot of change that needs to take place too back in the professional space about this whole topic, and you know not necessarily disregarding it. And we can still be inclusive, but we can also be diverse, but we can embrace this whole concept and take a little bit of time to think about it moving
I think
forward.
so too, Julie. Yeah.
That's my feeling. Whether I'm still around when that happens, I don't know.
Oh, I think you will be. You have changed in the 20 years plus that I've known you. You just always look so beautiful.
Likewise.
Oh
Anyway,
my God.
this is ending on a mutual admiration society sort of conversation, which is not where it's meant to go. But look, thank you very much. And look, for anyone who wants to upskill themselves in the area of sales, and let's face it, we're all salespeople, aren't we, Ingrid?
We
At
are.
the end of the day, we sell ourselves continuously all
Yes.
the time.
Yes.
To ourselves as well as to our family and friends and people we meet every day. So
Mm-hmm.
if people says, "Oh no, I'd never go into sales," that's not where I want to be.
Mm.
You're actually really not thinking hard enough about it, because everyone's in sales. Am I
Everyone's in
right?
sales. Absolutely. If you serve somebody else through whatever it is that you do, you have a customer, in my opinion. And it's that's sales. I would also say that wherever there's an exchange of value, there's sales. Wherever there's an exchange of ideas, if you want your idea to be heard, if you want your message to be heard, you need to be good at selling that.
So yes, there we go. So we'll end on that. So thank you again very much
Thank you, Julie.
for your comments. How can people get in touch with you, Ingrid, if they'd like to?
Sure. So there's two main ways. I think go to my website. It's probably the easiest to see the types of customers that I work with, the types of organizations, the results that I've been able to drive. So that's www.thesalesdoctor.com.au, or you can email me directly at ingrid@thesalesdoctor.com.au.
Wonderful. And you're on LinkedIn, of course, so
Of
people
course,
can find you there.
you will. Thank you, Julie.